family years ago shows up at my door with another man's kid, wanting to be a family again. I slammed the door in her face. Here is some context. My ex-wife, Laura, 35, and I, 36, met when we were in our mid-20s. When I was around 23, we worked at the same company, and that's how we met. After being in a relationship for 2 years, we got married, and within 3 years of our marriage, we had two sons, now 8 and 6 years old. The second pregnancy was unexpected, and she wasn't happy about it, but she didn't terminate it, even though I told her it would be okay with me if she did, since I didn't want to put her through anything she didn't like. After our first son, things were still great between us, and we were as in love as we could be. But that changed after the second pregnancy. She became moody and irritable and constantly picked on me or our eldest. I figured this was because of all the hormones and tried to make my peace with this new version of Laura. We thought this would change after a while, but things got progressively worse. My son and I learned to walk on eggshells around her. I was taking care of everything, even though she was supposed to be a stay-at-home mom. She quit her job of her own volition after our first child and did all the work around the house, taking care of our eldest while I worked. Until she got pregnant again, we had to hire a housekeeper because she said she was too tired to work around the house and look after our kids. I agreed, even though it was slightly out of our budget since I wasn't earning enough then. I agreed to hire a housekeeper because I didn't want to inconvenience Laura, especially while she was pregnant. I assumed she would return to looking after the house and kids during the day after our second son was born. Let me clarify that I wasn't one of those husbands who didn't do anything around the house after coming back from work. I did whatever I could to help out, even though I used to be exhausted from working. After she gave birth to our younger son, I thought she would take a few months, but then she would bounce back and we could go back to our everyday lives. But several months passed and she showed no signs of changing. She remained just as cranky and irritable and refused to do any work around the house. She would just sit at home all day and watch television. She didn't play with the kids or anything, but she would occasionally pay our neighbor to take them to the park. I don't mean to sound resentful, but I did feel that way because I was slogging at work day and night, and she wouldn't even do the bare minimum at home. It was also proving quite expensive for me to pay for a housekeeper to do all the cooking, cleaning, and other miscellaneous household chores. I had to take care of all the other expenses as well, and I wanted to save money for our son's future as well. That was becoming almost impossible because Laura refused to help me out in any way. So, after almost 6 months since our younger son's birth, I decided that we couldn't go on like this, and I had to talk to Laura. I knew this would be a difficult discussion, so I asked my parents to watch our sons for one day, and they agreed. That day, I sat Laura down and told her I knew she was tired after 2 pregnancies, but I needed her to help me out here and work with me. I explained to her that having a housekeeper was becoming too expensive for us. I needed her to honor her word and go back to doing at least some household chores so we could renegotiate and lower the housekeeper's salary and save some money. She opposed the idea and said no to it instantly because she said she was too busy watching the kids to do any of the work around the house. She said I should start earning more instead of making up excuses and blaming her for my financial condition. I tried to tell her that I was already doing my best, but she had to do her best as well if we wanted to make this marriage work. I also mentioned that she wasn't really looking after the kids because, as far as I knew, she would just let them watch television with her, and they would sit with her for hours while she watched tacky reality TV. This is what the housekeeper had once mentioned to me conversationally. I soon realized that bringing that up was a huge mistake because she flared up and accused me of spying on her through the housekeeper. She went on a tirade against me after that and said that she was not going to stand this anymore, that she was done being pushed around by me and being forced to do all the work while I did nothing except sit at a desk for a few hours every day. She then told me that this was my fault, that I couldn't afford a housekeeper, and that it was a shame that I had to beg her to help me out since I was supposed to be the man of the house. It was all really illogical, and she was just grasping at straws to somehow make it seem like there was nothing wrong with her not doing anything all day, and I was the crazy one for expecting her to contribute and pull her weight around the house. We ended up getting into a massive fight, and she called me a loser who couldn't afford to be with a woman like her anyway. I retaliated by calling her a lazy cow who had already failed at being a good mother, given how scared our eldest son was of her, and now she was failing at being a wife as well. That remark got to her, and she shoved me hard. I lost my balance and fell back on the coffee table very hard, shattering the glass and hurting myself. I had to be rushed to the ER, and she kept apologizing to me and crying throughout. Luckily, it was just my back that was hurt, and it was all just surface level injuries, but I could have seriously injured myself, and I didn't trust Laura anymore. I told her that she had to move out because I didn't trust her around kids. There was no telling when she might lose her temper and hurt them as well. I told my parents to take care of our sons until Laura was there, and for a week she kept protesting and said that she would never let this happen again, but I just didn't trust her anymore. I almost filed for a divorce, but she begged me to give her a chance, and by the end of the week, we had come to the conclusion that she was going to go live with her parents for some time and undergo therapy. Only when she had been given a clean bill of health by a medical professional would I allow her to move back in with us. There was something very wrong with her because happy people don't act that way, but she was willing to work on it and get better. I also didn't want my sons to grow up without their mother, so I agreed not to get divorced just then and give our marriage a second shot. We were also getting marriage counseling while we were living separately, but eventually it all turned out to be useless because she ended up cheating on me. My parents had moved in with me to help out with my sons while Laura was living with her parents. We went to marriage counseling sessions weekly, and things seemed to be getting better for a while. I was also in touch with her therapist, who told me that she had been suffering from postpartum depression, but she was getting better. One of her symptoms had been anger issues, which she didn't have before, but it got way out of control when she shoved me, and that was a wake-up call for both of us. This went on for almost a year, and around the 6-month mark, I even allowed her to visit our sons under my supervision. She was slowly becoming her old self again, and I was glad to see that. It finally felt like our situation improved and we could make it work. All of a sudden, she stopped coming to our counseling sessions without any explanation. She also stopped responding to me, but I knew that she was making progress since her therapist kept me updated. It didn't make sense to me, and for weeks I kept trying to talk to her, but she would just blow me off and say that she wanted some time to herself. Finally, after almost 3 months of her avoiding me, I decided to take her to her parents' house. I hadn't done that earlier because her parents didn't like me and blamed me because they believed that I was the one who had driven their daughter crazy and made her act out like that. She had told me that it would be better if I didn't visit her while she was living with them, since that would just lead to a lot of drama, and that's definitely the last thing that we needed. But I broke that rule and visited them anyway, since she had been acting distant and blowing off counseling sessions. Even when she would occasionally show up, she seemed uninterested, and I just couldn't make sense of it. When I tried to talk to her in person, on the phone, or even by text, she would tell me that it was all fine, but I could make out from her behavior that there was certainly something that she was hiding from me. When I showed up at her parents' house the day before, I expected her to be home, but she wasn't. When I asked her parents where she was, they told me they weren't allowed to tell me and slammed the door shut in my face. I could tell they were enjoying this, and I had a bad feeling about it, so I decided to call Laura while standing in front of her parents' house. I tried calling her several times, but she didn't pick up, and I was getting increasingly paranoid by the second, so I decided to sneak around the house and somehow get inside by myself. I went around to the backyard because I knew that her parents usually kept the kitchen door open, but I didn't even need to go that far because I spotted Laura sitting on the swing that her parents had in their backyard. The bad news was that she was sitting with her back to me because she was making out with a man I didn't recognize. It's been a long time since I saw them, but it's imprinted in my brain because it was the most horrible moment of my life, and I haven't forgotten it even today. The guy she was making out with drew back as soon as he saw me, and by the time Laura turned around, I had already started walking back to my car. She caught up with me and tried to stop me, but I wasn't hearing anything she said because I was in shock. She tried to grab me, but I shook her off and told her not to touch me. So she didn't, and I returned to my car and started driving home. I blocked her everywhere as soon as I got home, so she wouldn't have a chance to explain. I told my parents I wanted them to look for a lawyer for me and informed them of what I had just witnessed when I visited Laura's parents' house. I didn't see or hear from her until we met with the court-appointed mediator for our divorce settlement. I had pretty much turned into a robot by that point and was just functioning for the sake of my sons, but I had completely shut down emotionally. I didn't feel anything, even when I found out that Laura was terminating her parental rights because she had made up her mind that she didn't want to be with us anymore, that she wanted to be with the guy, let's call him Mark, that I saw her with the other day. He was her childhood friend, and while they had grown apart after high school ended, they had reconnected when she moved back in with her parents, and she had fallen in love with him. Her parents also supported this, which is probably why they were right about her making out with him in their backyard, despite her being a married woman with 2 kids. They had always wanted her to end up with Mark, and they were happy that Laura was finally choosing herself and her own happiness, as if she had ever been capable of doing anything other than that. The divorce was a long process because even though she had been cheating on me, she still wanted to qualify for alimony. It took us a while, but my lawyer and I fought hard and made sure that she didn't get anything in the divorce because it was all rightfully mine, since I had been the one paying for everything for so long, while she did nothing but watch television at home. It has been 5 years since the divorce finally came through, and we succeeded in our goal to make sure that she walked away with nothing. The months in which I was dealing with the divorce were some of the hardest times for me, but I knew that I couldn't break because I had to look after my sons since they had nobody except for me. My parents were helpful and supportive, and I can't ever thank them enough for being there for me while I juggled work and taking care of my kids. It has been 5 years since then, and even though back then the divorce seemed like the worst thing that could possibly happen to me, I am thankful for it now because I don't think I would be in the place that I am today had it not been for my decision to leave Laura. Since then, life has really treated me well, and I'm in a much, much better place now. We have since moved into a bigger house because I get paid better now, and I don't have to spend money on anyone apart from myself and my sons. My parents live close by and drop in from time to time as well. My friends love me, and my sons are as happy as they can be. That's all a man needs, and I'm so thankful to the universe that it's all going well for me now. Well, it was until Laura showed up again a few days ago. The kids were at school, and I was about to leave for work when the doorbell rang. Laura was standing outside with a girl beside her. The girl couldn't have been older than 3 or 4 years old, and I knew that this had to be Laura's daughter. I was surprised when I saw her standing outside my door, still trying to process it. She started crying and said that she was here to apologize and make things right with me. She told me she was finally ready to be a family again and give our marriage another chance. I couldn't believe she was back here after all these years, and now she wanted to give our marriage another chance, as if it was up to her to make that decision. Within a split second, I made up my mind and decided to shut the door in her face and turned her away because I didn't want to get into whatever this was. But before that, I told her this was no longer her family. I had stopped being her husband the day she cheated on me with Mark. The divorce was just a legal obligation, and she herself had given up custody of her sons. So now she had no right to refer to us as her family. After I said that, I shut the door and told her to leave because I didn't want her near my property. I would have cursed her out as well because I was really angry, but I refrained from doing it because of the little girl. I could hear her wailing outside my door for a couple of minutes after I shut it, but I decided to ignore it. Once I made sure that the coast was clear, I went off to work. I tried hard not to think about it because that would weaken my resolve, and I couldn't afford to let that happen. I almost succeeded in forgetting that Laura had even shown up at my house, but as soon as I came back home from the work, my parents called, demanding an explanation as to why I had turned her away. They told me that Laura had contacted them after I turned her away and shut the door in her face, and she had been devastated. My parents said that they were the ones who had given her my new address and told her to visit me since she was in the process of getting divorced from Mark and finally had a chance to make things right with me. They told me that Laura had reached out to them about a month ago, which had been in the works for quite some time. My parents believed it was about time I thought about my kids because my sons needed a mother, and there was no better mother than Laura. So they decided she deserved another chance and told her where to find me and what to say. I got really mad at them because it was not their place to forgive her, and they decided to give her another chance without even asking if I would be okay with that. It could have been really bad if the kids had been at home, and it was really reckless of them to pull something like this. So I told them off, but they refused to acknowledge that they had made a mistake because they had helped me during my divorce by taking care of the kids, and even now, occasionally, they do look after the kids. They believe that whether or not I wanted to patch up with Laura was up to me, and that they had an equal right to decide what was best for the kids, and I couldn't take that away from them. I thought it was ridiculous of them to believe that, because at the end of the day, they were my sons and not theirs. While I respected them and would always be thankful for what they did for me during my divorce, I don't think it was their place to let Laura back into my life again. We got into a bit of a fight, but they told me that I was the one who was out of line and selfish by not giving Laura another chance. They told me they had done their due diligence and were sure she was a different woman now and deserved to be a part of my sons' lives. Even when I reminded them that she had signed her rights away, they said that it was insulting that I believed they would put my sons or me in harm's way and accused me of ruining their lives by being too arrogant to accept that they needed their mother. It's been a few days now, and I don't think I was out of line or selfish because I've thought about this a lot. I don't regret not giving my ex-wife a second chance at being a mother. Update 1. About a week has passed since Laura showed up at my door with her daughter, and recently I learned the truth about her relationship with my parents. It's so disturbing that I don't even know where to begin, and I'm still struggling to process it. It's mind-boggling how they all have betrayed me without batting an eye. Apparently, they were not only the ones who had told her my new address, but had also been in touch with her all along. I had cut her out of my life after the divorce, but they hadn't, because they believed that she would come around at some point. They wouldn't talk much, maybe once a month, but that was enough for me to feel betrayed. Mark had made Laura sign away her rights after she was served with the divorce papers, and had given her an ultimatum to either abandon her family and make a new life with him, or she could keep in touch with her kids and fight for their custody, but that would mean she would have to leave him behind. According to my parents, it had been a difficult choice for her to make, but she ended up going with Mark to start a new family with him instead of sticking with the family that she already had. My parents said that Laura had contacted them shortly after I filed for divorce to tell them about her situation and asked them to help her because she still wanted to stay in contact with her kids privately. She had told them that she had been backed into a corner by both of us, and either way, she wouldn't be able to see her kids because I had been fighting for full custody with supervised visitation rights. At the same time, Mark had instructed her to abandon her kids altogether. Even if she did fight for custody and went against Mark, the chances of her getting partial custody were slim, given the circumstances of our divorce and her history of having issues controlling her temper. So, fighting for custody seemed like a waste of her time and resources. There was a real chance that she could lose both Mark and custody of our sons in the end if she decided to fight, and that's where my parents came in. She met them in private and practically begged them to let her stay in touch with her sons and help her out by acting as the bridge between them. She was aware that once she signed her rights away, she would not have any visiting rights, let alone supervision, but my parents would, and they planned on exploiting that. They successfully did so and fooled me for ages by going behind my back to allow Laura to meet our sons. They did so because Laura's situation struck a chord with them, and they realized that they couldn't, in good conscience, keep a mother apart from her kids. Stabbing their son in the back for years, however, didn't hurt their conscience. They told me that whenever I would drop our kids off at their house, they would invite Laura over and let her spend time with them. My kids never told me they were meeting their mom because my parents would bribe them with toys and candy, so they would keep their mouths shut about this. Whenever I asked them what they had done at their grandparents' house, my sons would tell me they played games with my grandparents and their friends. I always assumed they must be talking about my parents' actual friends, whom I already knew, but apparently that's what my parents had told my sons to refer to their mother in case I asked them about their day. I couldn't believe that my sons had been lying to me as well, but I forgave them because they're just kids, and also because Laura and my parents had manipulated and intimidated them into keeping quiet. After I learned the truth from my parents, when I asked my sons if they had been meeting their mother behind my back, they started crying and told me that they couldn't tell me because they would be punished by God if they did so. Laura and my parents must have really drilled it into their heads that telling me the truth would have dire consequences, and that's why they had been so secretive and vague all along. I also felt like a terrible father for never asking my sons which friends of my parents they were spending time with, because it just as easily could have been someone else, someone more dangerous than Laura, and I would never have found out. But I'm going to end it now since I'm getting a restraining order against all of them. I already have written proof of this since my parents sent an email to me to tell me the truth a couple of days after my fight with them. They believed that the email would make me realize how desperate Laura was to remain a mother to her sons without losing the alleged love of her life, and that would somehow make me forgive everyone involved. But it made me realize that everyone here was a nasty little liar, and I couldn't trust anybody anymore. It's also ironic how Laura signed away her parental rights and had to resort to meeting our kids in secret like it was a crime, all because Mark didn't want her to have any contact with her previous family, and he was supposed to be her one true love. But now, even they were getting divorced, and all that turned out to be for nothing. They even had a daughter together, but according to my parents, Mark wanted nothing to do with her or his kid now because he had received a job offer and was moving away in a couple of months. Laura had started working again recently, and their daughter had started kindergarten here, so she didn't want to move with him, which is why they had been fighting for a long time. It finally came to a head 3 months ago when Mark told her that he was done and was taking that job and moving out. He wasn't interested in being a family man anymore because it clearly meant that he would have to sacrifice his own future and happiness just to make her happy, and he wasn't ready to do that. This was all meant to make me feel sorry for Laura, but its only purpose was to make me feel like justice had finally been served. I have already spoken to my lawyer, and the petition for the restraining orders has been filed. My sons and I have also had a proper discussion about all of this, and I have told them that moving forward, they will never see their grandparents or mother again. They seem to be okay with it for now, but we are still going to go to therapy and try to work things out because I'm sure that this is going to be difficult for them and probably has been quite difficult for them for the past 5 years. But this all ends now. Update 2. Hey guys, thank you so much for your concern and support. I'm grateful that so many people have sent my sons lovely messages and blessings. My parents and Laura have been served with restraining orders and are supposed to appear in court in a few days. I don't know how they feel about this because I have blocked them on every possible platform and told my friends not to speak to them in case they contact them. I have also amped up the security around my house and worked from home for several days. I also spoke to my son's school authorities and told them about the situation. Initially, I didn't intend on letting them go to school for a few days, but I didn't want their education to suffer because of Laura and my parents. So now teachers are supposed to keep an eye on them and not let anyone apart from me pick them up after school. I'm doing everything I can to ensure they can't get to us because I'm sure they will try. So far, it's been good, and after we get that restraining order, they will continue to stay away. Update 3. Hi, so this is going to be a really short update, but we got that restraining order, and for the next 5 years, all 3 of those maniacs are going to have to keep their distance from me and my sons, unless they want to face terrible consequences. I'm still keeping all the security measures that I took in place for a while, because the last I saw them, they looked pissed, and I don't want to risk anything. My sons and I attend regular family counseling sessions, and I think we will make a lot of progress in the coming few months. Honestly, we have already made considerable progress. All I want now is for my sons to be happy, and that's it. So please keep sending us your best wishes. We need it. I am a 49-year-old EMT, and she a charming 51-year-old nurse. We found love in the shared passion for the medical field. We got married and life fell into an easy routine. No kids came along, but that wasn't a problem. She hung out with her nursing colleagues quite a lot, even on days off, but I never thought much of it. She loved her job and took great pride in it, especially when she earned a promotion and became a nursing director. Her promotion seemed to change things. She started working out more, became less affectionate, and we fought over trivial matters. Our once active bedroom life became virtually non existent. She would often use her phone quite a lot, even when I tried to have a conversation with her at times. But I dismissed these changes as stress from the new job. But deep down, I felt something was amiss. I was always taught not to accuse anyone of anything unless I could back it up with proof. So I waited one day for my wife to come home. I asked her what was going on with her. She was sort of snippy with me, which I didn't agree with, but I didn't press the issue any further. Inside, I said, okay. My wife made substantially more than me. She was just promoted to nursing director at the hospital she works at, making over 6 figures a year. After that exchange with my wife, I did a simple Google search here in California for some private investigators. I reached out to a few and eventually found one I trusted. After a brief consultation, I hired him to help me find out if my wife was cheating on me. It took 2 credit cards to pay him, damn near $11,000. The private investigator followed her around for a week, and what he found out ended up being the worst nightmare I could have ever imagined. She was indeed cheating on me, all right, to the tune of 3 men, and none of them worked with her. It took a few days to absorb the shock. My heart was heavy with betrayal, but my mind was clear. I had to divorce her. Infidelity may not be a crime in California, but it was a deal breaker for me. I was going after everything. I deserved it after the emotional trauma she put me through. The next day, I contacted a divorce attorney and explained everything. She was confident that I had a strong case. We filed the papers immediately. In the following weeks, my soon-to-be ex-wife was served the divorce papers at a workplace. Later that night, when she came home, she glanced at me in our home office, but didn't say anything, nothing. She ended up packing a few bags and leaving the house. When she left the house, she left a nasty text saying, "Good luck, you'll need it." I didn't retaliate. I just waited and let the process of the divorce do its thing. When my wife left the house that day, she never came back. Well, at least when I was there, she didn't. The weeks that followed were filled with stress, uncertainty, and the unknown. I was grieving the end of a marriage, but I felt more at peace knowing that she would no longer be able to hurt me emotionally. The divorce hearing finally arrived, and the most shocking thing I saw, before walking into the courthouse, my wife was sitting in her car with some guy. When my attorney did file for divorce a month back, she filed on the basis of irreconcilable differences. Well, my wife got her ass handed to her by the judge, alimony-wise. I was awarded $6,000 per month in alimony for 9 years. We were also ordered to split the proceeds when the house sold. I didn't get part of her retirement, and I was not awarded anything from her nail salon that she owned with her dad because it was in her dad's name. 8 months later, the house was sold. After settling all the payments, I walked away with $121,000. With that, our 16-year-old marriage came to an abrupt end. Well, about 4 months after the divorce, the private investigator contacted me and said, I have information on the 3 men she was running around with. Now, I didn't ask for this information, but I was curious. The first guy worked at an appliance store. She met him through an online dating app. He is married and has 2 kids. The investigator told me his wife has no idea. The second guy was a married doctor from another city. He was visiting town for an extended stay, and she met him at a local bar. But they stayed in touch, and he kept meeting her at the same bar and a nearby hotel. The investigator said the same thing. His wife didn't have a clue. His wife works as a bank teller. The third guy was someone who worked for the city. He as well had a wife and 4 kids. The investigator asked me, what did he want me to do with the information? I asked him, could he put that information onto 3 separate flash drives? I wanted to let these women know what their husbands were doing with another married man's wife. I took it upon myself to mail 3 big envelopes to all 3 wives. I told the wives who I was, who my ex-wife was, how their husbands met my wife, etc. Well, the response I got from all three wives was overwhelming. They were so thankful and didn't know how to repay me, but they all shared a common trait. They said they would never forget what I did for them and their families. All three of the wives filed for divorce in the coming weeks. The husband that got hit the hardest was the guy with 4 kids. He was married the longest and ended up paying alimony for almost 12 years. He lost a house, part of his retirement, and he had to pay part of his wife's attorney's fees. Yeah, California is rough. If I was the one that was on the receiving end of the judge's ruling in my case, I don't know what I would have done. $6,000 a month is a lot of money. Fast forward a month, and one of my ex-wife's old friends reached out to me and asked how I was doing. She told me that my ex-wife had started to date a doctor from the other city, and I thought to myself, wow, how do you move on that quickly? The private investigator had one more final piece of information for me. He said that my ex-wife had gotten into a fight recently with one of the AP's ex-wives, but I didn't care. All she needed to do was to make sure she sent that money to me every month. I ended up buying a new home, using part of the $6,000 per month to help fund it. My ex-wife did try to reach out to me by text shortly after the divorce, but I never answered. So that was my story about how I got divorced and the aftermath of what happened. I sincerely appreciate Tony sharing my story. When I found out my wife was cheating, I wanted to harm myself, but something made me stop. Don't know what it was. Well, in my opinion, this is going to sound bad. Men, we need to protect ourselves financially when it comes to divorce. I am getting stories where men are getting hammered in the courtroom. Now, this guy was lucky. California does not turn out successful divorce cases for men. Just saying. I am not saying every woman has a hidden agenda, but in the courtroom, some of these laws need to change. Women are practically becoming financially independent from divorces. Until next time. Another one of these crazy revenge cheating stories. Husband is blind and his wife has an affair and gets pregnant. Well, he was hell-bent on revenge. Well, I thought my life was content. I had a beautiful wife, Joanne. We had been high school sweethearts, and we started on this journey together, building a wonderful life. We had 2 incredible kids, Sonny, a soccer prodigy at just 9 years old, and Katie, our 6-year-old little artist who could draw like a young Picasso. I worked as a software developer at a reputable tech company, and Joanne was a nurse at the local hospital. We were both well respected in our fields, and the money was more than enough to keep us comfortable. Our weekends were filled with family outings, picnics in the park, hiking trips, and even the occasional luxury vacation. Joanne and I still had date nights every Friday, just like we did when we were dating. We'd go to our favorite Italian restaurant where the owner knew us by name and always had a bottle of our preferred wine ready. Our social circle was large and tight-knit. We were the go-to host for Thanksgiving dinners and summer barbecues, and our home was always filled with laughter and love. Joanne was the glue that held everything together. She was the one who remembered birthdays, anniversaries, and even the little things like the names of your friends' pets. But even in this idyllic life, there were small cracks that I chose to ignore. Joanne started spending more time on her phone, even during our sacred date nights. She'd laugh at text messages and quickly lock her phone when I'd glance her way. I told myself it was nothing, that after 9 years of marriage, we were still solid as ever. Well, things would change, and they would change rather quickly. The first red flag that appeared was subtle. Joanne, who was usually so attentive, started becoming increasingly engrossed in her phone. It wasn't just the frequency with which she checked it, it was the way her face lit up when she read certain messages. I didn't want to be that husband, the one who snoops, who doubts, who lets jealousy cloud his judgment. So, I told myself it was work-related or perhaps a new friendship that was bringing her joy. After all, we were both busy professionals. It was natural for work and social lives to interact in complex ways. But then came the late nights at the hospital. Joanne started taking on more shifts, or so she said. They're short-staffed, she'd tell me, and I can't let my team down. It was a reasonable explanation, and the extra income she mentioned didn't hurt either, but my instincts were telling me something else. She would come home exhausted, but her eyes lacked the usual fatigue that follows a grueling 12-hour shift. The mysterious phone calls soon followed. She'd step out onto the porch or lock herself in the bathroom, talking quietly, which I couldn't make out. When I asked her who she was talking to, she'd dismiss it as work calls or conversations with her sister, Susan. But she had a certain ringtone set up for Susan, and this wasn't it. Then there was the sudden, almost obsessive focus on her appearance. Joanne had always been beautiful, but she never really went overboard with her looks. However, she started spending more time in front of the mirror, applying makeup even on her days off. She bought new clothes, stylish, youthful outfits that seemed designed to impress. She even joined the gym and hired a personal trainer. All these changes, taken individually, could be easily explained. Was this some type of crisis, perhaps? A newfound sense of self? But together they formed a pattern, a series of dots that I couldn't connect, which kept nagging at me day and night. I considered confronting her, laying all my cards on the table, but I hesitated. What if I was wrong? What if this was all in my head? I couldn't risk damaging the beautiful life we had built over unfounded suspicions. Fast forward a few months, and the signs became too glaring to ignore. One day, while I was at work, I thought of a romantic gesture. It had been a while since I'd surprised Joanne at work, and I figured a bouquet of her favorite roses would be a nice touch. I left work early, picked up the most beautiful arrangement I could find, and drove to the hospital where she worked. When I arrived, I was greeted by her coworker, Nancy, who seemed surprised to see me. She told me I just missed Joanne. She had a doctor's appointment. A doctor's appointment? She hadn't mentioned anything about it to me. I thanked Nancy, left the flowers on Joanne's desk, and walked back to my car. But instead of driving back to work, I found myself doing something I never thought I'd do. I decided to follow her. Once I activated the location sharing feature on her phone, something we'd both done years ago for safety reasons, and saw on the app where her car was. When I found her car, I stayed put until she left the facility. When she left, I followed, maintaining a safe distance to avoid detection. The drive seemed to stretch on forever, but finally she pulled into what looked like a newly built subdivision. I parked my car at a reasonable distance away and watched, my heart sinking deeper with each passing second. There he was, a man I'd never seen before, waiting at the doorstep. Joanne got out of her car and embraced and kissed him. I felt like a complete and utter fool. We had not been intimate in months, but I didn't think it would ever come to this. But the moment that truly twisted the knife, that made my world come crashing down, is the fact that she grabbed this guy's hand and placed it on her belly, was shattering for me. After that gesture, I thought to myself, she is pregnant, and from the look of their intimacy, I had every reason to believe the child wasn't mine. I took out my phone and snapped a few discreet photos. The days following the discovery were a blur of emotion and activity. I was shattered, but I knew that falling apart wouldn't serve me well. I needed to be strategic, calculated, and most importantly, discreet. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator. Me just taking photos on my phone wouldn't be enough, I thought. It probably was, but I didn't think it would be sufficient. I found one who specialized in marital cases, ensuring that they would know exactly what evidence would be most effective in court. The private investigator went to work right away, tailing Joanne and her mystery man, capturing photos of their secret rendezvous. Even when she was supposed to be at work, she was cheating on me with this guy. He even got pictures of her going to a clinic with their mystery man. While the private investigator was gathering evidence on Joanne's betrayal, something told me to get paternity tests on my kids. Well, the kids were mine. That was a relief. With the help of the private investigator, we managed to obtain a paternity test. The results were confirmed that I was not the father of the child Joanne was carrying. I was devastated, but it was a crucial piece of evidence added to the rest. I really don't know how the private investigator pulled that off, because you can't just get access to someone's medical records, but I am grateful for that, no matter how he got it. Next, I consulted a divorce lawyer. I presented all the evidence I had gathered, and the lawyer assured me that it was more than enough to ensure a favorable outcome, but he didn't make any promises. We began the process of getting my financials in order, moving assets, and setting up separate accounts. I even established trust funds for Sonny and Katie, making sure they would be taken care of no matter what happened between their mother and me. While the lawyer worked on the legal aspects, I started making subtle changes at home. I became more involved in the kids' lives, attending every soccer game, every art class, ensuring that I was a parent they could rely on. I documented everything, knowing that this could possibly strengthen my case for custody. I also began to distance myself emotionally from Joanne, preparing myself for the life-altering confrontation that was to come. It was difficult to share a bed, a home, and even casual conversations with someone I knew had betrayed me so deeply. But every time I felt myself faltering, I thought of the ultimate payback that awaited her. It was the fuel that kept me going. By the time our 10th wedding anniversary rolled around, everything was in place. The evidence was irrefutable. My financials were secure, and my lawyer was ready to pounce the moment I gave the signal. Joanne had blinders on. She was busy planning a lavish anniversary party, inviting friends and family to celebrate a decade of what she still believed was a happy marriage. The night of our 10th wedding anniversary arrived. Joanne had gone all out, renting a beautiful venue and hiring a caterer to serve gourmet food. A live band played softly in the background as our friends and family mingled, sipping champagne and reminiscing about the good times we'd all shared. As the evening wore on, Joanne signaled that it was time for the toast. She picked up her champagne glass and tapped it lightly with the spoon to get everyone's attention. That's when I knew it was time. I have an announcement. Stepping forward and taking the microphone from her hand, the room fell silent almost immediately with all the eyes on me. I held up my phone, where I had prepared a slideshow of all the evidence, photos, videos, and the paternity test results. Joanne has been having an affair, I said, pausing just for a second, and she's pregnant with another man's child. With that, I set the microphone down and walked out of the venue, leaving a room full of stunned faces and a wife whose world had just come crashing down. The days following the reveal were a whirlwind of legal procedures, emotional conversations, and life-altering decisions. My lawyer filed the divorce papers immediately, and given the mountain of evidence we had, the proceedings were swift and decidedly in my favor. Joanne attempted to contest, but it was futile. It was 50-50 custody with the kids, and due to the prenup agreement we had clauses specifically about infidelity. Joanne walked away with nothing. She moved in with the man she had been seeing, apparently convinced that their love story would have a happy ending, but reality soon caught up with her. Within a few months, he left her, citing the overwhelming drama and scrutiny that came with being the other man in a high-profile divorce. Joanne was left alone, pregnant, and facing the consequences of her actions. But she got herself together because, remember, we had 50-50 custody of the kids, and she needed a place to call home for her and the kids. As for me, my primary focus shifted to Sonny and Katie. I took on a more flexible work schedule to be there for them, attending every school event, helping with homework, and doing all the things that a committed parent should do. I wanted to ensure that despite the turmoil, their lives would be as stable and loving as possible. So now I am rebuilding my life one day at a time. All I care about now is being a good father to my kids. Well, this is just my opinion. So many people are bent on revenge in these cheating stories. I get it. Sometimes the spouse committing adultery can sometimes spin the narrative and you want to get in front of it. Understood. But in this case, they spent money on a wedding anniversary. No way I would have done that. Fuck that. Don't spend money just to expose someone. Use that money for something else. If you want to expose someone, use the power of the internet, social media, emails, text messages, however you do it. Don't waste resources for that shit. But he did catch me off guard with the prenup. I didn't expect that. Well done. Until next time. This story is called Software Developer Loses Half Her 401k in Divorce. We have been married for 23 years. I am 53 and my wife is 55. I owned a computer business before the pandemic, and I had to close my doors because of it. My wife worked for a big software company here in California, and she still does. Never thought she would cheat on me, but she did, and with an old boyfriend who I knew nothing about, and he was just visiting when he came to California. But it turns out it wasn't an old boyfriend. I have 2 kids from a previous relationship, 2 boys, and she has 1 daughter that lives on the East Coast from a previous marriage. The kids are all grown. They don't live with us. They are out doing their own thing. My wife is one of the top software developers for the company. She went to UCLA and graduated. Her father is very wealthy and spoiled her most of the time. Anytime she needed money for her student loans or anything, her dad would fit the bill. Kind of made me feel less than a man because I didn't have the resources to help contribute. But when she received a major promotion, she stopped relying on her dad as much. Her income started to exceed $175,000 per year. I was starting to net that amount per year with my computer business. I only had my business for just over 5 years. As time went on, our relationship wasn't all that bad. We would still make time for each other and do things together. I would cook most of the time. It was a new skill I picked up since I closed my computer business. We had a decent sex life at our age, but it wasn't intense as it was in the last couple of years. As time went on, we started slowly spilling over into the dead bedroom, as you guys call it. We would just exist in the same house, not talking about anything other than just work, the bills, and things we need to do around the house. I would go to the garage and tinker with my tools. She would be on her laptop working on some software development project when she worked from home. My wife was very meticulous. She always kept her computer locked when she was away from it, even when she went to the bathroom, and always deleted her emails, even from the trash folder. I started to get suspicious when I saw her working late at night, and she would quickly turn off her computer screen or close the laptop when I walked into the room. She would do the same thing with her phone. It bothered me, but I didn't make a big fuss. I just kept observing. Over the coming weeks, it was more pronounced, and a few times when she worked late, she didn't come home until almost 11 p.m. and didn't even interact with me when she did come home. One day, while I was at home, she sent me a text saying she was working on some software project and was going to be home late. I don't know what came over me, but I didn't respond to her text. I just made a mental note and went on about my evening. My wife got home at about 1 in the morning, which I thought was alarming. So the next morning when she went to work, I started doing some research on some private investigators here in Southern California. I didn't want to make a rash decision and just hire the first one I found. I wanted to make sure I found the right one that could do the job correctly. I called one, we talked for a bit, and he asked me why I might need his services. I told him I thought my wife might be cheating on me. He asked me a series of questions and he said he would do a little research and get back to me. A few days later, he called me back and we met in person. I showed him some pictures of my wife, what kind of vehicle she drove, and what she did for a living. He told me his usual fee and I agreed. He told me it would take about 2 weeks to get everything together. He wanted to follow her for a few days to see what she was up to, and if he saw anything out of the ordinary, he would let me know right away. 2 weeks went by, and I didn't hear anything from the private investigator. So I called him. He told me he didn't have anything as of yet, but he had her under surveillance. Another week went by, and he called me. He told me he had some evidence, and we arranged a time for me to come to his office to review the footage. I was nervous. I didn't want to see my wife with another man, but I had to know the truth. I went to his office and he showed me the footage. It was hard to watch, but there she was in the parking lot of her office, lip-locked with another man. The private investigator said no one else was around. The night in question was one of those nights where she said she was working late. I was devastated. I couldn't believe it. The private investigator told me he would do some more digging and see if he could find out anything else. I thanked him and left his office in a daze. I went home and I didn't say anything to my wife that night. I wanted to wait and see if the private investigator could find out anything else. I didn't want to confront her without any proof. A few days went by and I received a call from the private investigator. He told me he had more footage and we arranged a time for me to come to his office again. I went and he showed me the footage. It was worse than the first time. She went to a hotel with him, but he said they were only at the hotel for a few hours before they got into their cars and they kissed each other before leaving. I told him to get more evidence. He told me he would keep trying. I thanked him and left. On the way home from the private investigator's office, I called my best friend and told him that I needed a place to stay. He said, "What?" I told him she is cheating on me, and he said, "No way, you're kidding." I told him, "Nope, I am not," and he was in disbelief as well. When I got to my friend's place, I showed him the footage. I didn't think he believed me. He was shocked at what he saw. A few hours go by, and I get a text from my wife asking where I am. I didn't respond to her text. I didn't want her to know I knew what she was up to. My friend said, "You need to tell her you know, and you need to leave her." I told him I know I need to leave. I told him I didn't want her to know just yet. I had a plan in place. I was going to wait a few days, and then I would act like I knew nothing. I would confront her about the affair, and when she denied it, I would show her the footage. It was a devious plan, but I wanted her to feel the pain that I was feeling. But my private investigator made me change everything. It turns out that the person she was sleeping with was not an old boyfriend. It was someone that worked in the company, but not directly with her. The private investigator said that he continued to dig once he found out who the guy was. He also told me that the company has a policy against workplace romance. It's prohibited. If you get caught, the first offense is you are suspended for 60 days without pay. Once my private investigator told me this, I made it a point to call a divorce attorney for a consultation. I was done. I wanted her to lose everything that she had. The attorney said since she was the breadwinner, I am entitled to spousal support and part of her retirement. I told him to go for it. I wanted her to lose everything. Over the next few days, I went back to my place while my wife was at work, started packing some of my things, and headed back to my friend's place. Fast forward a couple of days, and my wife hasn't reached out to me. I suspect she knows that I probably know that she has been unfaithful. 2 weeks passed, and my attorney informs me that my wife has been served with the divorce papers. I told him, "Good, let's move forward with this." A few days after that, I get a call from my wife. She is pissed, and she starts yelling at me about the divorce papers. How could I do this to her? I told her, "You were cheating on me. I am supposed to do that." She denied it, and I told her I have the footage to prove it. She was quiet for a few seconds, and then she said, "You are such an asshole for doing this to me." She told me I wasn't getting anything in the divorce. At the divorce hearing, my wife's attorney was an absolute idiot. Everything he tried to get thrown out, the judge denied. Since we were married for 23 years, the judge awarded me half of her 401k. Her 401k was worth almost $400,000. I was also awarded spousal support for almost 7 years in the amount of $2,915 per month. Now, I wanted to get some revenge. I compiled the video footage my private investigator gave me, went to a Starbucks with a fake email address, and sent small video clips to the CEO of the company. In the subject line, I wrote, "I think this violates your workplace romance policy." I signed it as concerned employee. A week goes by. I didn't hear anything in regards to my email, but her daughter was wondering where I was. She came to visit and she called me. I flat out told her that her mom was unfaithful and I divorced her. She cried. I told her I was sorry, but I didn't want to tell her while we were going through the divorce. I have since told my boys and they were upset, but they are adults and they will understand. A few days pass and I called my ex-wife's daughter and asked her did she want to have coffee. She said she couldn't because she and her mother were going to spend the day together. I asked, I thought she was at work. Her daughter said, no, mom got suspended because something happened at work. I said, oh, I am sorry to hear that. We talked for a little bit longer. I told her I loved her and hung up the phone. I knew the email worked because my ex-wife got suspended. I hope she has some savings. A few people asked why I didn't go after the house as well. Simple. I didn't want it. I got half of her 401k and spousal support for 7 years. I can buy my own with her money. As it turns out, the guy she was seeing was married as well. He also got hammered in his divorce. Anyway, I have moved on with my life. I have started dating again, but I don't think I will ever get married again. If you enjoyed the story, please like, comment, and consider subscribing to the channel for more content. I sincerely appreciate your time. I initially posted this on the Reconciliation Forum, but over a few days, I realized I was a fool again. My wife and I are about 2 years post-affair discovery. Here's the brief backstory. Wife had an emotional affair with her former boss. It had likely been going on for years before it hit my radar. We were friends with him and his wife and did couples things together from time to time. But my wife and him started to run together, and that's when it started. In hindsight, I feel a little stupid not picking up on it much sooner than I did, but I completely trusted my wife and believed she was telling me the truth. It was a deep trust, which wasn't typical for me with previous partners. Their relationship started to bother me, but I kept it to myself. I didn't even know about the concept of an emotional affair at that time. Around the time it started bothering me, we decided to move out of the state across the country to be closer to family and for a better place to raise our young children. I felt better about the situation because they would not be working or running together. Again, at this point, I was worried only about a physical affair with no concept of an emotional affair. After we moved, they continued to message each other and talk on the phone from time to time. I was okay with that, only because I thought it was accruing a lot less than it actually was. Fast forward a couple of years, and we are in marriage counseling. The reason for the counseling was we were having a recurring argument about her not living up to her end of the agreement to resume working after the kids were in school. During the counseling, she brought up that she missed her old friends. She listed female friends, but also listed her old boss. She said there was a half marathon coming up in his town, and she wanted to go run it with him and his wife. I agreed. We resolved the before mentioned argument, and that was that. She flies out there for the race, and I call her the first night. Turns out his wife was not in town, but was out of town on work for a last-minute project she had to take care of. My wife knew about her not being there prior to going, but never told me about it. I started to dig that weekend. Everything you would expect to find. Phone calls well in excess of what I knew about. Tests at all times of the day and night. When she came home, I confronted her with the phone calls and asked if they were having a physical affair. She denied it. Just friends. I'm being controlling and paranoid. Classic playbook stuff. This was the beginning of a year, a living hell which I could have saved myself from if I had been more educated about affairs and how they work. Deleted messages, no contact agreements broken, gaslighting, a couple marriage counselors. I became an expert affair investigator, or as close as you can get. I work professionally investigating child abuse cases, so I had a lot of tools in my tool bag to work with. Every time she went underground deeper, I followed and uncovered the deceit, confronted her, and she would get mad that I had spied on her. I never uncovered any evidence of a physical affair, although I've always suspected it. I found a lot of information though, and feel like there would have been some indication. I think she rationalized them being just friends because there was not a physical affair. Eventually, I figured out I was just pursuing her and trying to control what she did. I looked at the unhappy person who spent the majority of my day thinking about it or spying, and I had said enough. I told her I was filing for divorce. I didn't say I was filing unless she did something. I just said I was. My dumbass decided to give marriage counseling one more shot. My counselor made a recommendation and hit a home run. This new counselor was great. In counseling, my wife refused to characterize her relationship as an emotional affair, just friends. During that session, I asked my wife if she had communicated with him recently, and she said no. I took a pile of email printouts dated from the last week between her and her man and handed it to the counselor. The emails were not damning, except they proved she was actively lying to me and the counselor. The counselor confronted her somewhat aggressively. She said the man was aware of his impact on the marriage, and if he were truly just a friend, he would back off, not have secret phone calls and emails. That visit ended with the counselor telling my wife there was nothing she could do for us unless my wife accepted it was an affair and wanted to focus on the marriage. We stopped counseling. That's where I made my next mistake. I had met with an attorney and was starting the process of divorce. I started to have conversations about division of assets. Turns out, she thought I was going to go live in a shack and she would stay in the family home and live life as normal. I spelled out the financial situation to her and she started to do the math. Crap. All of a sudden, her affair was going to cost her something because my pain didn't seem to have any cost to her. She came to me in the month following and said she chose me and wanted our marriage to be rebuilt. She agreed to the no contact again and to let me see her devices anytime I wanted. The thing is, I had to fight her on that even. In reading other posts, I see the best cases are ones where the betraying spouse is proactive about wanting to rebuild trust out of a feeling of remorse. She reluctantly agreed to the bare minimum. I should have realized in the moment how empty those agreements were for us. Since then, things have actually felt pretty good. Sex is good, time together seems meaningful. I had initially asked to see her devices a couple times, and she complied. I eventually decided to resist asking to see her devices. If she was going to cheat again, I couldn't stop that, and I knew that if she started up again, I would figure it out eventually, even without spying. I didn't want to live a life being a full-time investigator at home. 2 years since I discovered the emotional affair, I started to get that nagging feeling. She was visiting my mother with the kids in California. I couldn't go because of work. I messaged her and asked for the login information for her work computer. Keep in mind, it had been a good 9 months since I asked to see anything, and maybe 4 times total since she agreed to let me see them. She went into a dialogue about how me asking has triggered her and made her feel controlled. She said she wanted to be with me when I looked at it, which was a week away. I figured since she didn't have possession of the laptop, it was secure. I figured I could wait a week. What I didn't expect is the emotional creep that's occurred during that week. I feel like I did during the bad times. She's home now. I haven't seen the computer. I asked for permission to hold on to the computer until she was ready for us to look at it. I didn't want her to be able to do cleanup. I'm assuming she has access to work email remotely. Since it's strange, she hasn't wanted to attend to work emails. I don't want to go through the dance again, but I don't want to jump straight to divorce without new evidence. My thought is to start the 180 treatment and begin moving on. If she approaches me to reconcile, I won't do it unless she is taking proactive steps, basically chasing me. Please don't speculate on if there was a physical affair. I've gone round and round with that one, and in my case, I feel that the emotional affair is a component that is much more damaging than a physical affair. I've been tested and included as part of my regular physical each year. Howdy there, stranger. My name's Taylor, and I'm a 45-year-old Texan. I've spent the past 25 years saving lives and battling fires. Not to brag, but I guess you could call me a local hero. At least that's what they used to call firefighters like me. But to be honest, I'm just a simple man who likes to help folks and give back to my community. Just up until last year, you'd find me at Station 42, located in the heart of our charming, close-knit town. My days were usually filled with rigorous training, unexpected fire calls, and a whole lot of waiting in between. But let me tell you, when duty called, there was no hesitation. We'd swing into action, ready to battle whatever inferno awaited us. That was my life on the clock. But off the clock, things were a little quieter. I was a happily married man of 18 years to my wife, Colette, and we were the proud parents of two brilliant college-bound kids. Our daughter, Kate, was heading off to the University of Texas, and our son, Luke, was preparing for his freshman year at Rice University. You'd often find me and Colette bragging about them in every social gathering. Can't blame us, they're great kids. Now, Colette was always a strong-willed, independent woman with the real knack for the real estate business. She started as an agent right out of college, and over the years, worked her way up to being one of the top realtors in our county. I was always amazed by her ability to balance her high-pressure job and still manage to be an incredible mother to our kids. We lived in a beautiful 4-bedroom house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. We had a big backyard with a picket fence, just like you see in those movies, and a dog named Chico. He was a big, friendly golden retriever that we all adored. It was a classic American dream, and from the outside looking in, we had it all. Our weekdays were structured and busy with work, school, sports practices, and dinner together as a family. Colette would often cook one of her famous dishes, while I'd set the table and share stories of my day. Our weekends were reserved for relaxation, maybe a barbecue with friends or a movie night in our cozy living room. Family traditions were important to us. Whether it was our annual summer trip to Galveston Island, a visit to Grandma's for Thanksgiving, or cheering our hearts out at Friday night football games, these were the moments that we cherished. So, you see, we were just like any other family living out their own version of the American dream. We were a team, the four of us, facing whatever life had in store, together. I learned that things are not always what they seem. The people who you thought would stay together might have different ideas. Well, one day our lives took an unexpected turn. One evening while the kids were away visiting their cousins in Houston, leaving me and Colette alone for the weekend. We had just finished a peaceful dinner when Colette dropped an absolute bomb. She just came out and said, "I think we should consider an open relationship." My exact response was, "What the hell are you talking about? An open relationship," she repeated. Then she said, "It might be good for us." Good for us? I was struggling to comprehend what she was saying. The idea of sharing my wife, the woman I devoted my life to, was absurd and heartbreaking. The following days were nothing but arguments. Colette stood firm on her proposal, insisting it was a journey of self-discovery she needed to embark on. She said that her desire to explore was not related to me or our relationship failing, but it still seemed like she wanted to be with other men. I was a firefighter, trained to stay calm in the face of danger. But this was a crisis I wasn't prepared for. The woman I had shared my life with for the past 18 years now wanted the freedom to share hers with others. I asked her if she was unhappy, if I had failed her as a husband. She tried to reassure me it wasn't about that, but it didn't ease the sting. I questioned whether we had grown apart and whether our kids leaving for college had created a void she was trying to fill. She dismissed my concerns, saying it was about her personal growth. Personal growth, my ass. This seemed like she was wanting to explore more sex with different men, not anything about personal growth. That's the only conclusion I came to. She just wanted to be with other men. We sought advice from friends, therapists, even strangers on online forums. Each conversation, each argument seemed to pull us further apart. Some advised us to embrace the idea, saying it could strengthen our relationship. Others cautioned us, citing the potential harm it could inflict on our family. I found myself torn between wanting to respect Colette's desires and protecting the sanctity of our marriage. In the days that followed, I found myself at a crossroads. Despite my internal turmoil, I realized that I needed to understand Colette's perspective. She was my partner, after all, and we had promised to navigate life's challenges together. It was in this spirit that we decided to seek professional help. A neutral party, we thought, might help us untangle our emotions and guide us through this unexpected turn of events. Our first few sessions were spent explaining our situation, voicing our feelings, and attempting to understand each other's perspectives. The therapist was patient, listening intently and occasionally asking thought-provoking questions. The sessions were emotionally draining, often leaving us exhausted but slightly more enlightened. In one session, the therapist asked my wife what particular reason she felt the need for an open relationship. Colette took a deep breath, and it looked like she had tears in her eyes. "I feel trapped," she confessed. "I love Jim, but I also need the freedom to explore, to experience different things. I don't want to live my life with regrets." Man, listening to her, I just couldn't fathom this woman telling me she felt trapped after being with me for 18 years. Basically, Colette wanted her freedom. I was beginning to think the kids are gone and it's just me and her. Colette didn't back down on a request for an open relationship. That's all she talked about in our counseling sessions. And to be honest, I was getting tired of the counseling sessions. There was nothing wrong with me. It was her. I didn't request an open relationship. She did. I don't want to see other women. I found myself grappling with an unavoidable truth. Our marriage, our life as we knew it, had changed. The unassuming suburban life we had created, the stability, the comfort, all hung in the balance. As much as I loved Colette, as much as I wanted to understand her, I also had to confront the reality of my feelings and the potential implications of her decision. I simply told her, "I understand you want something more, something different, but I can't be a part of it. I can't share my wife with someone else. Our vows meant something to me, Colette. They still do. I can't change who I am, and I won't force you to change who you are. But I can't continue like this. It's either the open relationship or our marriage. You need to choose." Then she said it. "Jim, I need this. I can't suppress this part of me anymore." Well, in that moment, when she said that, I asked her to leave, and she said she wasn't going anywhere. I got in her face. "Well, I am not sure how much I can keep my temper in check." Her eyes got big, and then she started packing. The days following Colette's departure seemed to stretch into a never-ending expanse of loneliness. The 4-bedroom house felt far too large for a lone inhabitant. Telling our friends and family was a hurdle I wasn't prepared for. How do you explain that your wife of 18 years, the mother of your children, had chosen an open relationship over her family? That she packed her bags and walked away from the life we built together, Each conversation was a repeat of shock, disbelief, and ultimately sympathy. But their well-intentioned words of comfort did nothing to alleviate the deep-seated pain. The kids were away at college. I dreaded their calls, the normalcy in their voices, a stark contrast to the turmoil I felt. I tried to keep my conversations upbeat, evading their innocent inquiries about their mother. The day I had to tell them the truth would come, but I wasn't ready, not yet. Taking the first steps toward divorce was hard. Finding an attorney was a daunting task. I didn't know the first thing about divorce law, let alone how to pick an attorney. But I was a quick learner, the high stakes serving as motivation. After several meetings and recommendations, Colette, despite her desire for an open relationship, was surprisingly reasonable during the proceedings. There was no malice, no fight for more than her share. Our kids, now aware of the situation, were the hardest part. We decided to tell them together. It was clear that they were confused and hurt, and it was heartbreaking to see them try to comprehend the situation. We reassured them that we love them very much and that we are committed to being good parents, even though our marriage was ending. Like I said, at the divorce hearing, it was pretty straightforward. Colette didn't try for alimony, and neither did I. She made quite a bit of money being a real estate agent, and me as a firefighter, I did okay with a few investments on the side. The equity in the house was to be split down the middle when the house was sold. The kids took it hard, and my daughter flat out thought I did something to make her mom divorce me. I never told them why, even when we told them we were splitting up. But that day they asked, and I told them, ask their mother if they didn't believe me. I said their mother wanted to be in more of an open relationship, and the kids were shocked. They thought I was lying, and I reiterated, told them both, go ask your mother. Well, as the months passed, the house was sold, and I ended up buying a new home and started hanging out with my friends again, fishing, bowling, working out. My support system was strong, and my kids would come home from college and stay with me on some weekends. Colette, on the other hand, wasn't doing so well. I mean, she was still selling real estate, but the kids didn't want to be around her so much. I guess it was just like she said in counseling. She had to explore and experience different things. But I think that journey wasn't really what she wanted after all. My daughter spent one weekend with her after the divorce, and all her mother did was answer phone calls and show houses. They didn't do anything together. Well, I later found out through one of our mutual friends that my wife was probably cheating the last 3 years of our marriage. This person claimed he overheard Colette tell his wife of an encounter she had with a guy at one of the houses she was showing. At this point, I didn't care. I was divorced from her. We still chatted, mostly through text, about the kids. But all good things come to an end. One day she called me, invited me to lunch, and said she wanted to talk, but I declined. I simply told her, we don't need to have lunch. I don't need to talk. She pitched the idea of reconciliation. I said, oh no, Colette, you broke my heart. The only reason I am talking to you is because of the kids. That's it. That was the last time I talked to Colette until my daughter called me from the emergency room one weekend. She was staying with her mother. Apparently, her new boyfriend beat her up pretty bad. I did not go to the hospital. I told my daughter just to keep me updated. I have ranted long enough. I appreciate Tony for taking the time to upload my story. For those of you that think open relationships can work or think it would be good for your relationship, doesn't mean your partner will agree with you. My wife is 47 and I am 50. She works as a real estate agent and I drive trucks locally, rarely going out of state. We have 2 kids. Our oldest son just moved out and our daughter is in her last year of high school. We've been married for 22 years and together for almost 30 years. Recently, I noticed my wife becoming distant. I didn't say anything at first, just observed. She hasn't locked her phone, and her electronic activity hasn't changed. I can access all her devices. Our bedroom life has suffered. Every time I try to touch her or initiate intimacy, she flinches, which has set me back mentally. 2 weeks ago, my wife told me she was attending a real estate conference out of state. I didn't question it. She was gone for a week. On the last day, I checked the mail and went through our credit card statement. I saw the usual charges, streaming services, and dining. Then, I noticed a charge from a cellular provider we don't use. We have Verizon. It was from Boost Mobile. The customer service rep told me the number associated with the account was a prepaid number, which baffled me. I called both of my kids. They had no idea what I was talking about. I called my wife. She didn't have a clue either. A month later, I checked the credit card statement again. This time, the Boost Mobile entry charge wasn't there. One Saturday morning, while my wife was home, I took her car to the local car wash and cleaned it. While vacuuming, I saw a receipt on the floor. It was a Boost Mobile receipt for a bill payment with the store address. I wasn't angry, just curious why she would pay for another cellular provider. I took a photo of the receipt. When I got home, I didn't mention it to her. Our so-called dead bedroom had now spanned about 2 months. She didn't even thank me when she took her car keys and left. After she left, I became suspicious. We hadn't had sex in over 2 months, and she was paying for a prepaid cell phone, which I couldn't find since the first charge appeared on our credit card statement. That night, my wife didn't come home until almost 4 a.m. That had never happened in the 30 years we'd been together, especially without her telling me. I kept my cool. I didn't yell or get in her face. I learned this from my brother and father. I started digging. I checked everything I could of hers, but came up empty. After the 3rd month, things started happening. The credit card statement showed a hotel booked a day after her 2-day real estate convention. I kept digging and found out it was in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was done. I called a private investigator and gave him all the information I had, the receipt for the cell phone, which wasn't on our plan, and the hotel charge after her convention. I also called a divorce attorney. We chatted for a bit. He told me South Carolina is primarily a no-fault divorce state, but you can file on fault-based grounds. I didn't do anything yet. I had no proof, but my gut told me my wife was up to no good. I didn't tell my wife anything for 3 months, not even about the receipt or credit card charges. About a month later, the private investigator found out my wife was cheating on me with her real estate broker, who was also married. The day I met with the investigator and received the evidence, I went straight to the attorney's office and filed for divorce. The investigator caught them having sex in a parking lot at an abandoned shopping mall. He followed them to a hotel. She was using another phone on certain days, and those calls weren't on our Verizon plan. My wife had a burner phone. I still don't know where she kept it. After I initiated the divorce, I didn't say anything to my wife or kids. Life went on for the next 4 weeks. My attorney told me my wife would be served soon. I made plans to be absent when she was served. When she was served with divorce papers, she immediately attacked, saying all sorts of things about me. I laughed and followed up by telling everyone why I filed for divorce. I made sure to take out the explicit stuff and sent small video clips to everyone in our family circle. The title was, "This is what the private investigator found." After everyone saw that, including her friends and family, they didn't have much to say. At the divorce hearing, she tried to get the house for herself, but the judge wouldn't allow it. We split it. She also had to reimburse me for the hotel money she spent on her lover, which was about $100. I didn't have to pay alimony. When the kids found out, They really laid into their mother and haven't spoken to her in almost 6 months. The house sold about 8 months after the divorce, and she got her half. My wife's affair partner, her broker, also got divorced. I told his wife about it, and she filed for divorce immediately. Last I heard, she is going after everything. If anyone is going through this, remember to keep your cool and not get angry, because you'll make mistakes. I was married to this woman for over 20 years. The way she acted, I didn't know she was capable of this behavior, hiding a phone and some other crazy stuff. About a year after the divorce, I finally had a chance to talk to my ex-wife's AP's wife. She gets $4,000 a month in alimony. She will get half of the equity in the house when it's sold. She moved out of the house when she found out from me he was cheating. They have 4 kids, all grown. This guy is 15 years older than my ex-wife. The only time I talk to my ex-wife is regarding the kids. The kids don't reach out to her. She calls and texts me asking how they are. All I say to her is they are fine and hang up the phone. Then one day she called. I went off on her. I told her to stop fucking calling me and call them. If they want to talk to you, they will. She just told me I was being an ass, and I said, don't call me anymore. Well, I never heard from her again after that. Thanks, Tony. In my opinion, resorting to violence in response to infidelity is not only counterproductive, but can also have serious legal and emotional consequences. When confronted with betrayal, it's natural to feel a range of intense emotions. However, acting on those emotions with aggression can lead to criminal charges, which can further complicate an already distressing situation. According to data from the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, in 2024, about 20% of men and 25% of women in the U.S. experience some form of physical violence from an intimate partner. These statistics highlight the prevalence of violence in relationships and underline the importance of finding nonviolent ways to handle conflict. The story illustrates the importance of staying calm and methodical. By not reacting with anger, the husband was able to gather evidence and protect his interests legally. This approach ensured that he had a solid case for divorce and could expose the affair without facing repercussions himself. Moreover, violence often exacerbates the situation, causing more harm than good. As per studies, children exposed to parental violence are more likely to experience emotional and psychological issues affecting their long-term well-being. In essence, responding to infidelity with violence not only undermines one's case, but also perpetuates a cycle of harm. Keeping a clear head and taking calculated steps ensures justice is served without collateral damage. Never settle your problems with violence. You should only resort to violence in self-defense. This is a horrible story in my opinion. This guy's wife of 26 years was cheating with 5 men over the last 6 years of their marriage. My wife and I have been married for 26 years. We met in college, and it was love at first sight. Both of us are now in our early 50s, with 2 grown kids who live on their own. I spent most of my career as a military officer, retiring after 25 years of service. My wife was a dedicated school teacher before retiring a few years ago. She now works full-time at a department store on the second shift. Over the last few years, I noticed subtle changes in my wife's behavior. She started going out for lunch with her girlfriends about 3 times a week. At first, I didn't think much of it. She deserved to have fun and enjoy herself after all those years of hard work. But then her returns from work became later and later. She always had an excuse, a late shift, a meeting, or errands to run. Our bedroom life also took a hit. She would pull away from me, claiming she was tired or not in the mood. The turning point came 6 months ago. One evening, as I sat alone in our living room, I found myself questioning everything. Was it just my imagination, or was there something more to her behavior? I decided I needed answers. I hired a private investigator to follow her and uncover the truth. The private investigator had a reputation for being thorough and discreet. I met with him several times over the next few weeks, anxiously awaiting any news. Finally, he called me in to discuss his findings. My heart pounded as I entered his office. He laid out a series of photographs, videos, and documents on his desk. The evidence was irrefutable. My wife had been cheating on me with 5 different men over the past 6 years. 3 of these men were married, which only deepened the betrayal. He showed me photos of her at various locations, restaurants, hotels, even in our own home. The videos were the hardest to watch. Seeing my wife with other men, laughing, kissing, and more, tore me apart. He handed me a thick folder containing all the evidence. I couldn't speak. My mind was racing, my emotions a whirlwind of pain and anger. I had always trusted her. We had built a life together, raised our kids, and shared countless memories. How could she do this to us? I knew I had to act quickly. The first step was to protect myself financially. I removed her from my life insurance policy and our shared credit cards, where she was an authorized user. It was a difficult decision, but I couldn't risk her spending our money behind my back. Next, I decided to contact the wives of the 3 married men. They deserved to know the truth about their husbands. It was one of the hardest things I have ever done. Each conversation was filled with shock, disbelief, and sorrow. I shared the evidence with them, hoping it would help them make informed decisions about their futures. I then filed for divorce. My attorney was supportive and understanding. He assured me that we would handle everything. I gathered all the evidence from the investigator and shared it with my attorney. He advised me to wait until she was at work before making any moves. I also quietly sent the evidence to our kids. They needed to know the truth from me, not from their mother or anyone else. I wanted to prevent any false accusations against me. When the day came to leave, I felt a mix of emotions. I waited until my wife went to work in the afternoon and began packing my things. It was a quiet, somber process. I didn't want to make a scene or draw attention. By evening, I had moved into a nearby motel. The next week was tough. She called me once, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. I needed time to process everything. I spent the days reflecting on our marriage, the good times and the bad. How had we come to this point? She was served with divorce papers a week later. I was at the motel, trying to distract myself with TV, when my attorney called to confirm the papers had been delivered. I felt a strange sense of finality. This was really happening. The day of the divorce hearing arrived. As I walked into the courtroom, I saw her sitting with her lawyer. She looked calm, almost indifferent. The hearing was brief. My attorney presented the evidence, and her lawyer didn't contest anything. She showed no emotion as the judge read the final decree. It was as if she had already moved on. We were ordered to sell the house and split the proceeds. She was also required to pay me alimony for the next 9 years. My wife was also a trust fund baby. Her father left her a lot of money when he passed. Despite her betrayal, I was sad. I spent almost 27 years with this woman for her to act like she didn't care one bit. This was the end of a significant chapter in my life. After the hearing, I reached out to our kids. I explained everything to them, sharing the evidence and the reasons behind the divorce. They were shocked, especially our son. Our daughter had suspected something, but didn't want to hurt me by bringing it up. It was a difficult conversation. In the months following the divorce, I focused on rebuilding my life. I found a new place to live and began to reestablish my social circle. It wasn't easy, but I knew I had to move forward. I continued to maintain a strong relationship with our kids, supporting them as they processed the news. I put the house up for sale and started planning for the future. I knew I needed to create new memories and experiences to replace the painful ones. Friends suggested therapy, but I declined. I felt that I could handle this on my own, drawing strength from my years in the military and the support of my loved ones. 9 months after the divorce, I received a letter from her. I didn't read it. There was no point in reopening old wounds. I had moved on, and I was determined to build a new, happier life. Reflecting on our 26 years of marriage, I realized that love can blind you to the truth. But now, I was free to live my life without deception or betrayal. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt hopeful, and that was enough for me. Moving on from a 26-year marriage was challenging. Every corner of my new home reminded me of the past, but it was also an opportunity for a fresh start. I decorated my place with items that represented my new journey. Photos of my kids, mementos from my military career, and new art pieces that symbolized growth and resilience adorned the walls. Social gatherings, which I had often avoided during the tumultuous final years of my marriage, became a regular part of my life. I even took up some new hobbies, bowling, something I had always wanted to try, and cooking, which turned out to be therapeutic. I also decided to get back into shape. Regular workouts at the local gym not only improved my physical health, but also boosted my mental well-being. The routine provided a sense of stability and progress. One day, while sorting through old boxes, I stumbled upon photos and letters from our early years of marriage. It was a bittersweet experience, revisiting memories of happier times. There were moments of doubt, questioning if I could have done something differently. But I reminded myself that trust and fidelity are the foundations of a marriage, and those had been irrevocably broken. My kids were my greatest support during this period. They visited often, ensuring I wasn't alone. Our bond grew stronger as we navigated this new chapter together. We shared their own struggles and triumphs, and we supported each other through it all. About 2 years after the divorce, I met someone new. It was unexpected and took me by surprise. She was kind, understanding, and had also gone through a tough divorce. We connected on many levels, sharing our stories and supporting each other's healing process. We took things slow, understanding the importance of building a strong foundation. Trust had to be earned, and we both were willing to put in the effort. This new relationship brought joy and companionship back into my life, something I had missed for a long time. Closure came in different forms. One day, I decided to read the letter my ex-wife had sent me. It was an apology, filled with regret and explanations. She admitted her wrongdoings, acknowledging the pain she caused. While it didn't change the past, it provided a sense of closure. I realized that holding on to anger and resentment only prolonged my suffering. Forgiving her didn't mean forgetting what she did. It meant freeing myself from the burden of bitterness. It was a gradual process, but it allowed me to move forward with a lighter heart. Reflecting on the entire ordeal, I understood the fragility of trust. It takes years to build, but can be shattered in an instant. Moving forward, I vowed to be more vigilant, but also open to new possibilities. My experiences had taught me the importance of communication, honesty, and mutual respect in any relationship. I also became an advocate for others going through similar experiences. Sharing my story helped others feel less alone, and it gave me a sense of purpose. Support groups and online forums became platforms where I could offer guidance and support. Now, years after the divorce, life has taken on a new rhythm. I've found happiness in small things: morning walks, coffee with friends, and quiet evenings at home. The new relationship has blossomed into a partnership built on trust and mutual respect. We travel, explore new hobbies, and support each other's dreams. Life is not without its challenges, but it is fulfilling and meaningful. Looking back, I see how far I have come. The betrayal that once shattered my world has now been transformed into a journey of growth and strength. I have learned to trust again, to love again, and to find joy in the everyday moments. Oh, the 3 women I contacted. They are all divorcing their husbands. One wife already had her husband under surveillance and was going to divorce him anyway. She is going after everything: house, his retirement, and alimony. My ex-wife, who cheated and abandoned our family years ago, shows up at my door with another man's kid, wanting to be a family again. I slammed the door in her face. Here is some context. My ex-wife, Laura, 35, and I, 36, met when we were in our mid-20s. When I was around 23, we worked at the same company, and that's how we met. After being in a relationship for 2 years, we got married, and within 3 years of our marriage, we had 2 sons, now 8 and 6 years old. The second pregnancy was unexpected, and she wasn't happy about it, but she didn't terminate it, even though I told her it would be okay with me if she did, since I didn't want to put her through anything she didn't like. After our first son, things were still great between us.